Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor to be asked to present at this forum. I am Jayant Shriram. As introduced, I work with Innovation Media Consulting, which is a global media consulting firm. We bring out two annual publications, one for FIP and one in association with Winifra. And I'm going to be speaking about the latter. I'm the co-editor of the book. I have a few copies with me here today in case anyone is interested later in picking up one. So just to start. Sorry. So we cover in the book the best innovations from some tough years for media. And it's based on 12 months of research and global media consulting experience with companies around the world. We cover a variety of topics from business models to how media companies deal with social media, product development, first-party data, and we cover 5 strategies and 1 major innovation for publishers' successful futures. This is a list of some of our clients that we've worked with around the world. And so I'm not going to run through the whole book, you'll be pleased to know, but I'm going to focus a little bit on our chapters on product management. And I'm going to try and keep it relevant to the Indian industry and some learnings that are relevant to the Indian industry. There are lots of international examples that we cover, but that may not always have relevance to the audience here. So the past 2 years have seen breathless innovation. And as news organizations race to launch new audio formats, new things like newsletters, visual investigations, that's where product management really becomes important, because product managers basically manage sustainable innovation. They have this bridge role in news organizations. Now, of course, building products, effective product management has implications for moving to first-party data from third-party data. It has implications for subscriber retention. And but I'm going to sort of just tracking back, going to focus more on why product management is important. So you must have this phrase is something that's fairly well, it's kind of often touted now that publishers need to become product companies and not just news media publishers. I'm going to try with some insights from the book to sort of break it down and try and understand what exactly this phrase means, right? Because I don't want to be overly broad. So, well, this is our chapter. So product thinking begins with realizing that every way people experience the news is a possible product or feature. Now, right, so I think this is something that we can all relate to. In the beginning, there was only one product, which was the newspaper or the magazine, or in case of broadcast, the radio station or television. That product got a lot of local advertising, and so that was how the business sustained. And there could be this kind of hard wall, if you like, between the journalist who only focused on content and the business team that focused on ad sales. And that's kind of how you get these definitions of the Chinese wall that that exists between the two teams. And of course, as media changed, as the internet came in, as we moved digital, the product became kind of diversified. So there were all these new ways in which to consume news, to experience news. So despite being the youngest department at most organizations, product teams really become rallying points for innovation, because the idea is that they're the customer advocate. They ensure that whatever product and feature is being built is focused on the people we are building it for, which is the news consumer. So they are, they're really counted on in a sense to be this bridge. Play this bridging role between various departments in the news, kind of break silos and think about the ways in which news organizations can build experiences for customers. So to break this down some more, because again, those are all sort of broad ways to look at it. Product can be broken down into 4 categories, basically. And one is the consumer-facing or platform, which is what you do on the web, the apps that the news organization develops, newsletters, e-paper, podcasts. Then you have what are called enabling products, which can include checkout experiences, paywall, personalization, which is becoming increasingly important, notifications. Third, which is internal tools, which could be your customer relationship management systems, and importantly, advertising tools that gather first and third-party data. And fourth, and these are really important, and it's emerging as a really important business model for publishers. These are tools that have been developed in-house and sold to other businesses. Some prominent examples here is the Washington Post, which has become actually sort of, like a flag bearer for this kind of business model. Its Arc software is sold to publishers around the world, and they use it as a CR, to produce their content, to do advertising sales, a whole bunch of things. Or there's a very interesting company in Canada called the Globe and Mail, which is a news publisher but devoted a lot of resources into becoming a very effective AI company, essentially. So they have a suite of products called Sophie, and Sophie does everything from automate print production, they can do that totally, or it can do that totally, to creating things like a predictive paywall, which predicts when a customer is likely to subscribe, what kind of subscription offer that customer should be getting. And again, Sophie, the Globe and Mail sells this software to publishers around the world. So these are the four categories under which you can broadly group product development. So one thing that's important to keep in mind here, it's not always about product development. It's not always about creating shiny new things. Most product teams actually spend a lot of time in just optimizing current products. I can give you a couple of examples from around the world again. Like the New York Times, for example, found that when they introduced the option to log in via email in their newsletters, which is called magic linking, they actually increased subscriber logins by 2%. Other organizations like the Daily Telegraph, for instance, just found that by optimizing web homepage loading speed, that increased subscriber views. So it's a lot of it is about refining. Lots of time that goes into product development is kind of refining the existing product. It's not always about creating a new podcast or a newsletter, though of course that's part of it. So this is, I think, fairly important in the Indian context, because publishers here are not as far in the journey in product development as publishers from around the world. So there is an impression here that product people basically come from tech, which is true to an extent. The role of product manager is basically imported from the tech world. In the tech world, the product managers are kind of called the term, they're sometimes referred to as mini CEOs, because they coordinate the work of software managers, and then while also ensuring that product development meets customer needs and larger business development perspectives. But that's not always the case. So in a 2020 survey conducted by INMA, which covered about 60 news companies from around the world, this is what they found, that almost 50% of product people come from the newsroom, 30% from marketing, and 26% from technology or revenue advertising. So what's the learning here? It is, I think, fairly accurate to say that one of the sort of setbacks that media companies in India face is that hiring product managers from the tech world can be expensive. There is, of course, a reasonable expectation that product managers can move from media to tech and back to tech, so that creates a kind of a salary expectation. I think the point here is that there is a lot of opportunity to find product people from within your newsroom, and upskilling people from the newsroom. Just speaking from personal experience, I used to work at the Hindu um, I developed and launched the paper's podcasts and newsletters when they started. And I didn't really work with a product manager or a product team. It was essentially all done from scratch. But essentially, well then, I as a journalist and basically with a reporting background, in a sense became a product manager. Not in the way that lots of companies structure product teams today, perhaps, but that was, it was just out of curiosity and trying new things and trying new mediums. So it's not always that product people need to come from tech, although the role is borrowed from tech companies. So, well, you will find, so according to the survey as well, product people have very diverse job titles. I think you find some of these titles coming into media companies in India today. So that's growth managers, subscription managers, digital strategy editors, customer experience editors, business development. So all of these roles kind of broadly, these are the titles that product people have, and I think you'll see these roles now across organizations, even in India. So just a quick joke here. So there's a joke that managers want to be vice presidents want to be CEOs, and CEOs want to be product managers. So that's kind of how it goes. Apologies for the slide, but some other findings from the survey. Product teams are relatively new. As I said, they're the youngest teams in any news organization. Product teams vary wildly in size. Of course, organizations like the New York Times have hundreds of people who sit in product. Actually, that's the result of how their product teams are structured. But there's no sort of consistency to this. And the thing around which there is really no consistency is where a product team sits in a news organization. I want to go to, so of course, again, I said I didn't want to get into too many international examples, but I do want to highlight one example that we mention in the book, which is from Singapore Press Holdings, geography not too far from here. They run publications like the Straits Times, the Business Times. So, they've already evolved like a structure in which product thinking kind of goes through the organization. So how does that work? So they come up with these cross-functional teams, and again, it's not just people from tech. So there are some people from product design, but people from circulation, editors, data, analytics, they all sit in on these teams, and various teams are formed to sort of look at different ways in which product can be developed. And this is also, I think, a learning that could be relevant for companies here, which is that they have a system of having a monthly steering committee where senior management can weigh in on these conversations, which again, I think I must acknowledge that unless senior management gets involved in these conversations, the product development really isn't going to go very far. So just for organizations that are more further into their product development journey, the New York Times now organizes, around, they create a mission, which is like either a program mission, which has things to do with like outward-facing products, like podcasts and newsletters, or platform missions, which is more underlying infrastructure, and then they build teams from editorial, from various departments around these missions. A publication like the Financial Times has bridge teams that look to, create mini bands or topic verticals. Think, for instance, here if you have a successful crossword or something like that in your publication, and then you want to sort of create that into a mini brand in itself. On a much larger scale, that's what a publication like the Financial Times would do. So, a couple of areas in which product thinking really couple of ways in which product thinking can really be useful this year and going forward. So one, of course, is using innovative content formats to adapt to audience needs. Now, what exactly does that mean, right? So, for instance, there's a lot of attention now to audio products because We've just gone through some years where people have participated in a lot of video meetings and have consumed a lot of video. So there's understandably quite a lot of fatigue around that. So how do you then creatively bring in audio? And it's not just about podcasts, which of course is one way. There's a lot of innovation around converting text articles to audio, and the ways in which you do that. Do you just use a synthetic voice to do it, or do you have voice actors? Do you use AI to kind of record voices and then generate human-sounding voice? Those are some examples there. Personalization is a big focus area for product development, which is that you increasingly you try and personalize the news user's journey to get the right information to the right reader in the right format. So I want to, of course, the entire point of having good product development is to contribute to a publisher's business models. We cover in the book 14 prominent business models that any publisher can have in their revenue mix, if you like. Of course, there's no publisher that has 14 business models. That's unrealistic. But we do recommend that reader revenue should form about 40% of the mix, and then perhaps 2 or 3 more would be good. A couple of things here, and sorry, I'm not meaning to test everybody's eyesight. This is just a representative slide to show all the various business models. A couple of things here that I think, just to sort of close off, that I think are relevant to magazines in particular, and these are areas, if you like, that we are going to be focusing going forward for the books and in our consultancy practice. One is the, so 40% of, so one is the move from, the move beyond subscriptions, I would say, toward membership models, because it's not the same thing. Subscriptions, paywalls and subscriptions can be somewhat blunt force instruments that may not work for all publishers. This is something that we've seen around the world. It is a paywall strategy can work for bigger publishers, who have the ability to sort of attract more readers. It may not work for all publishers, and you do find around the world that there are a lot of news publishers who are looking to reframe that conversation around reader revenue. So whether that's things like inviting readers to participate in the newsroom's processes, or there's an organization in the UK called Tortoise Media that has these events called Think-ins, where members can participate in the way that the newsroom works. There are multiple examples like that. So that's one. That's a business model, if you like, that we are focusing a lot on this year. And other ways in which, sorry, I'll just run through the list quickly. So just to close off, the other ways in which product thinking, I think, can be applied this year is one is, and as I said, it's not about reinventing the wheel mostly. It's about creating a vehicle or vehicles, redeploying in ways that in ways that the customer can get behind. So a couple of ways in which this can happen. One is subscription bundles, which is familiar to most publishers here. You kind of have a print and a digital offering, perhaps an offering with archive content. That's one way. We're doing a lot of work this year on finite products, which is to play up the strength of a magazine or newspaper to create a finite reading experience. So rather than have this endless flow of information, kind of curated into an experience that readers can start and finish. So an example of that, for instance, would be the Economist Espresso app, which creates like a finite number of stories that creates that finishable experience. There is the FT Edit app, which is a really interesting product that they introduced last year. That gives you they just create 8 stories, and you have, and they give you things like the time that it takes to read each story, kind of a tracker on how much time is spent, and then, just giving you that idea that you've engaged enough with the news that day and you've sort of finished something. And of course, membership offerings, as I said. So I will stop the presentation there, and I won't sort of run through the rest of it, but I just wanted to give you some insights into how product development might work in, for companies here. Thank you.